Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The real fight starts now, says Jeremy Corbyn, as the Brexit gun is cocked. So exactly what fight? When? Where? And over exactly what? The shadow Brexit Secretary, Keir Starmer, is here with all the answers, I'm sure.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's a big week for Brexit, and you have said the Labour Party is going to hold the government to account. So when?
Well, just before we get to Brexit, would you mind if I just say on behalf of all MPs from all parties that we send our condolences to all the victims and their families, and a special thanks to Keir Starmer, who died protecting us, our staff and our visitors. I'm sure you don't mind if I just say that on behalf of all MPs.
Thank you very much for that. So moving from that back to the Brexit story.
Yes.
This is a big week for Brexit. The Great Repeal Bill and so forth is coming, and Article 50 is being triggered. And you have said that you're going to hold the government to account. And I must just ask you, how?
Well, what I'm setting out tomorrow are 6 tests for the final deal for Brexit. So far, all the attention's been on should the Prime Minister have permission to start the negotiations. We're through that part. Now, what comes into focus is what is the right deal, because this is about our future relationship with the EU. So I'm setting out 6 tests for the government. We then start a 2-year process, probably more than a 2-year process, and it's for the government to negotiate and come back with a deal that's right for our country.
And luckily and happily for us both, I have your 6 tests here. I won't go through all of them.
No.
You say you want a strong, collaborative future relationship with the EU. I would suggest that everybody wants that.
Well, you say that, but I think some of the pure Brexiteers actually want us to crash out either at the Article 50 stage in 2 years or before that. So I accept that the majority of people want a collaborative, strong relationship. But it is important to say that because not everybody's in that place.
You'll have seen the words of Michel Barnier and others this week about what might happen if we don't have a deal. In your view, how damaging would it be not to have a deal?
Oh, very damaging. Very damaging economically. That's what the CBI, what the Mayor of London and many others have said in pure economic terms. But there's also Britain's place in Europe and in the world. If we crash out without a deal, we've no meaningful relationship with our EU partners. Now, I accept we won't be members, but we must be partners, and this has to be fought for over the next 2 years.
Let's come on to the second bit, which is slightly crunchier. You say we want the exact same benefits, your words, from the single market and the customs union. Can I put you that that is just not going to happen? We're outside both of those things. Michel Barnier and others have made it absolutely plain that we cannot get all the same benefits as if we were inside, and therefore that is a hopeless thing to ask for.
Well, we're not inside. I accept that. I do not accept that we can't have the same benefits achieved in
same benefits?
Now, those words, exact same benefits, are not my words.
They're in your lists.
They're in my test, but they're taken from David Davis, the Secretary of State for exiting the EU. When he was pressed on this in Parliament, he said that he would deliver a comprehensive free trade agreement and a customs arrangement that delivered the exact same benefits as the single market and the customs union. So we're holding him to that test. It's not, the government can't turn around now and say this is unachievable, because it was David Davis, who the Prime Minister's appointed in the role of exiting the EU, who set that as what
now we come on to the next very interesting bit, which is that Mr Barnier, Mr Juncker this week and many others have said that it may be achievable, but there is a real price to pay. It's about £50 billion. Is that a price worth paying so far as the Labour Party is concerned?
Well, so far as the money is concerned, I wouldn't get into a debate about the precise figure, but I would say this. I think it's very important early on that the principles of liability are established. What is the money for? What are the principles that are to be applied to it? And then I think the Prime Minister should say loud and clear, we are a country that complies with our international obligations. And when a figure is arrived at, that is a figure that the UK, as an international country,
But you accept that we would have to pay a fairly hefty bill, let's not talk about numbers, but a fairly hefty bill in return for getting free access to the single market?
Well, as I say, there will be principles, there will be a bill, and I think we should say loud and clear we're a country that honours our obligations. Now, how much and over what period is to be negotiated? I'm very strongly of the view that there ought to be transitional arrangements from March 2019 until we reach and conclude the strong collaborative relationship that we need. So that could be paid over a longer period if we get the right relationship.
Now, among the other lists, I won't go through all the tests, but you talk about the fair management of migration in the interests of the economy and communities, which, if I may say so, is a fairly bland thing to say. Can I ask you to explain to us in a single sentence what Labour's immigration policy now is?
Well, we are clear that immigration was part of the debate in the referendum, and therefore there's got to be change to the freedom of movement rules. So that goes.
So freedom of movement goes.
That has to go, and when we exit the EU, therefore, there won't be that rule.
Your leader suggested that might not be the case. It might go or it might not.
Well, it's an EU rule. It will have to go, and therefore there's a blank piece of paper. And what I'm saying in the test for tomorrow is that we must have managed migration. I think that the two most important things are, firstly, what's going to work for the economy, and then secondly, what's right for our communities.
And do you see EU migration falling dramatically or substantially as a result of us leaving the EU?
I think it might fall, but I've talked to hundreds of businesses across the UK in the last 3 or 4 months, literally hundreds of businesses. They're very anxious, very concerned that there should be the right rules in place to enable them to continue with their businesses. And I think everybody is in that place.
You rule out freedom of movement staying?
Well, freedom of movement is an EU rule, and therefore that will go. There will be a blank piece of paper, and we then start with the principles that we need to apply to a future-looking immigration policy.
So your leader said, and I quote, "We do not rule it out."
Well, I think that was in a sentence where he said, "I'm not committed to it, neither do I rule it." But the reality is,
Slightly confusing sentence.
This is an EU rule, and it will go once we depart. And that actually gives us an opportunity in the Labour Party and elsewhere to say, what does a principle-based immigration policy look like that works for our communities and works for businesses?
Let's come to the really crunch questions. There are your principles. If you don't get them, what do you do?
Well, I say this first. I hope that the Prime Minister gets the right deal for our country, because this is not about party politics.
Sure, but if you don't get what you want, this is where you say you're going to hold them to account. You don't have the votes in the House of Commons. What's going to happen to make Theresa May change her mind if, as you fear, she's going in the wrong direction?
Well, this is where the work that we've done in the last few months on process, I think, comes into play. Firstly, we've got a commitment to report back over the 2 years. So we set the tests tomorrow. We then have 2 years of report back so we know where we're going. We also won a concession in the House that we will have a vote in 2 years' time on the final deal. And I make it clear tomorrow that if our tests are not met, then we do not intend to support the deal the government comes back with.
And do you think there's any chance of there being enough Tory rebels alongside the SNP and the Liberal Democrats and your own colleagues to actually defeat the government in those circumstances?
I think that the balance in the House at the moment is for the strong collaborative relationship with transitional measures and a not extreme Brexit of crashing out. And I would hope that that's the place we land in 2 years, and then we go on to transitional measures, and then the future of our country is assured in a partnership with the EU, albeit not membership.
Do you agree with Tom Watson that there is an organised attempt by left-wingers to take over the Labour Party via Momentum and Unite?
Well, I was concerned with what was revealed last weekend, and I think Tom Watson was quite right to point it out and
to call them out on it.
Call them out on it. That all having been said, we do as a party need to find a way to come together and fight the really important fights that are going on. We had the terrible attack last week.
Sure.
We've got Article 50 being triggered on Wednesday. There are big national issues that the Labour Party needs to be focused on.
And meanwhile, it looks as if the fight of the Unite Union leadership is a kind of proxy for the fight for the Labour Party itself. Do you have a message for Len McCluskey in these circumstances?
I don't have a message for Len or for anybody else other than to all Labour Party members, which is we should celebrate the fact we've got so many members. It's a huge energy, but we do need to come together and we need to unite, and we need to have real clarity about what we're for, not just what we're against.
I'm sure that's right. Keir Starmer, thanks very much for talking to us.
I've been getting away with it all.